Joining me to discuss more on this, we have Bolu Michael-Biyi, foreign policy analyst. Hello, Bolu. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Having me.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on this, especially the fact that Mexico has experienced, cycles where eliminating cartel leaders triggers violent fragmentation. What are we seeing? Are we likely to see splinter factions emerge? And could this make the security situation worse in the short to medium term?
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for that question. You see, removing a strong man, it leads to internal succession wars. As lieutenants within the cartel, they fight for that top spot. These cartels, they're so organized, and they're not ones in such a way that there won't be a known list of successors. They're not cartels whereby you cut off with the head and the rest of the body will die. They are very organized. Their franchises. They have a long chain of people who could actually step up. I mean, Nigeria is a case study. Shekau is down, from the Boko Haram, but this evil is still being perpetrated because they have another leader standing idly by. So it's the same case for these cartels. That's how they operate. We are already seeing arsons, blockades, and all across Jalisco in the city, and the Mochuacan immediately following the news of the killing of this most wanted man in the American continent. So the state and local police, they are often outnumbered, outgunned, and intimidated. We could see that. I'd like to relay things to the local context. We could see that even you would fight against insurgency with the Boko Haram and the rest of that. We needed the support of external powers. We couldn't really make any headway until we had the support of the United States with their much more sophisticated weapons, and that's what we are seeing playing out in Mexico as well. So the solution to this is the urban containment, ensuring that they are keeping control of the urban centers. That's a major way to prevent these hot zones from spilling into civilian centers. So the security secretary, Omar Garcia Havok, must deploy high mobility security and National Guard units so that they can secure this terrain, because the people need to feel safe. They need to feel like the government is still controlling the streets, not the cartels. Thank you.
Okay. Now, but to what extent did President Trump's public threats of military intervention influence President Sheinbaum's decision-making? Would you say this is a case of sovereign strategy or diplomacy under duress?
Okay, I would like to put things into context, because interpretation is very important. The glass that is half full is also half empty. 6 and 9 are the same. It depends on where you're standing. You see that, U.S. and Mexico, they are neighbors, and whatever, we owe each other that duty of care and interstate responsibility. Nigeria, for example, is bordered by Chad, Niger, Cameroon, and Benin Republic. Whatever happens in this country will affect Nigeria. So Nigeria is in a position to say that, okay, you better work on in your country, because if there's chaos, there could be a spillover of what's going on in your country, in my country. And I think that's what Trump was doing, not necessarily a threat per se. I think it's just more like an admonishment or a warning, which he has every right to do because they share the bubble. The problem is that the perception that Mexico is acting only because Washington said so it kind of undermines President Sheinbaum's domestic legitimacy, and that's the problem. So we see that the timing is impossible to ignore, because what I'll call Trump's speech or effort as an intervention, it's followed by immediate action, which is unprecedented and high level. And it's a win on both sides because they can claim victory because they kind of work together. If they were not working together, then I could say, okay, it's a threat. But they worked together, they provided intelligence, they provided the necessary equipment to fight and win and capture and kill these notorious gang leaders. Mexico has economic reliance on the United States, so they definitely would not ignore anything, any alarm that America raises. So it's a win for them, because if we look at it, if it were to be a threat, they've now translated threat into a bilateral win between the two states. So
but with confirmed intelligence support from the U.S. agencies, including the CIA, by the way, where should Mexico draw the line between security collaboration and protection of national sovereignty?
Okay, I think the challenge basically is relying heavily on the United States. They rely so much on U.S. ears and eyes, and that can lead to a loss of operational independence. We've seen in the past that there have been leaks and the arrest of Mexican officials in the United States. They show that intelligence sharing is usually one way, and that has the potential of embarrassing Mexico. It has to be two-way. You share intelligence. Nobody understands Mexico than Mexicans. Nobody understands the security situation in Mexico than the security operatives operating the day-to-day in Mexico. So Mexico lacks that high altitude surveillance and intelligence capability. When we compare to the CIA or the DIA, if we weigh them and put them side by side on the table, the United States is much more advanced. So there's a need to definitely work together with them. So they need to have a strict audited protocol for data sharing, for intelligence sharing, so that Mexico can actually have their boots on the ground. And it's very important they have the final say concerning the issues that pertain to their territorial integrity. So the National Intelligence Center of Mexico must establish a vetting process that clears every U.S. intelligence that is given to ensure that the actual execution of this intelligence, at least 75% to 100% led by Mexican forces.
Okay. Now, Bolu, former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador adopted, we know that he adopted a hogs, not bullets strategy. But has Sheinbaum, broken from that doctrine? And what does this signal about the future direction of Mexico's security policy?
Okay, well, hearing that reminds me of Nigeria's amnesty program. But did that really stop the Boko Haram from or the breaking of the pipelines and all that at the time? Not necessarily. It's kind of reduced it, but I didn't totally stop it. You see, these people are very they are evildoers, and they're not thinking, they're not being humanitarian when they attack people, right? So negotiating with them and being nice to them is not going to solve anything. I think Obado was trying to copy, the style of the late Jose Modica, the former president of Uruguay, that legalized marijuana, and he was able to have greater control of the movement of this particular drug. But we can't deal with cartels that way, because they make more money when they are not regulated than when they are regulated. And don't forget, I said earlier, they're franchises, so you can't entirely control one body. You can control one body, but you can't control the other cartel that is operating under the same franchise. So the whole strategy only allow the cartels to expand their territory and political influence under Obrador's government, and they didn't have any fear of political or federal retaliation, which allowed them to expand. So I think it's kind of a breakaway, but Sheinbaum cannot entirely criticize that Obrador's policy, because they're from the same party, the Morena party. So she can't publicly trash that old policy, because that's likely to cause internal political rift. So I think that President Sheinbaum should officially, pivot the narrative to much more about precision with justice, kind of, so that it doesn't sound like, he's criticizing predecessor. He must frame it in such a way that signals that it's a transition to a higher high-tech, tech enforcement or strategy against the cartels. It depends on her framing, but she shouldn't appear to criticize her predecessor.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bolu Michael-Biyi, for your time and for speaking on this.
Thanks for having me.